Okay, I had a composition in mind that I wanted to try here. We'll start off with the Cracked Earth Large. And I'm just applying a dark brown here. Okay. I'm going to go fairly high on the composition. Okay, we'll go with that. We have the sides here that we can fill in, or you don't have to. But this will fill in nicely. Just overlap about a ½ inch or so to that side, and we'll go again on the other side. Okay. Like so, it's the first impression's overlapping about into here. Okay. And you get that. I'm not really worried about down here, although if I, wanted to, I could stamp some more of this down here. You want to do that? Let's just show you. I've been doing all of that kind of blending, kind of Stampscapes University types of videos lately, and it's all about kind of the blending of imagery and how to overlap things, and don't get too caught up in super careful placement. At least with my designs. My designs have been designed and labored over in terms of my transitions, so you should be able to stamp things out and really kind of fill things in a nice seamless fashion where you can't tell, where one impression ends and the other one begins. And that's the way all kind of landscape imagery preferably would work, right? So that you don't have to kind of labor over kind of tedium. Tedium meaning, real careful masking and placement types of issues. You should be able to just go right into it and stamp very freely. Alright, now, should I stamp this tree right now? Let's hold on that one, okay? Alright, that was going to be the oak tree large. I think both of these stamps might be in auctions. I'm not sure about the oak tree. I might have sold out of my, at least overstock of those stamps. I'm not quite sure. But I'm pretty sure that the Cracked Earth is still in one of the auction groupings. Sold individually as well, but You can get some great deals on those overstock auctions when they're posted. All right, now I'm thinking about using my stylus tool or one of them on this scene. You can also just use a ripped paper towel. I've been using that a lot lately. Let me clean off my. I had a lot of my stylus tools packed away for my semi-recent stamping trip, convention trip to Mesa, Arizona. Glad I was able to get that in before everything shut down in the nation and world. If you were at that show, great to see you. Okay, now here's my concept here. There's going to be this area of kind of a lighter area up here. Slightly lighter, okay? Doesn't have to be real light, but we'll make it slightly lighter. Okay, then this is antique linen. And by the way, this is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch quarter size page. Kind of just filling it in here a little bit. I want this scene to get really kind of dark and murky. So I don't want too much light in here. I want this to kind of be a pretty claustrophobic, in terms of light, scene, okay? I want it to be really kind of mysterious and, I don't know, maybe a little weird, bizarre. We'll see how it goes. I want it to be kind of real theatrical and like a otherworldly, maybe like a stage production of something, like a stage set of some type of scenario. Okay, this is walnut stain. It's a Distress Ink walnut stain. Okay. This is just going to provide me with a nice foundation for a lot of other colors to come. The dominant kind of color scheme will not end up being this brownish tinge, but it'll provide me with a really fantastic foundation coating, base coat, for other colors to come, and it'll give it a little bit of warmth that I so desire in the end result. Alright, so do you see the lighting what I have here? It's kind of light up there, separated by dark, and then light again down here. I use this light, dark, light lighting scheme in so many of my scenes. It might even be as high as 90%. And it's a really easy one to employ into your scenes. All right. Okay, now, one of the things that I often do is I get a color scheme going. Okay. And I line up my pads in what I suppose is a light to dark range. Now, I don't know if I'm going to use all these colors, and you certainly saw me use the Distress Inks, so yes, you can mix and match, okay? Things that you're not going to mix and match, you're not going to mix and match something like dye-based pigment inks, in this coloring process here. You're going to stick with the same types of inks, but, types of inks are types of inks. They're slightly different a lot of times. A lot of times things are just branded, too. There's some companies out there that make pads for different companies, so that it just has a different name, but the colors might be different, too, but the chemistry of those inks are often the same, or similar at least. Okay? So these ones are dye-based inks that we're using right now. This is a bubblegum pink. So it's just a light pink, but you can work it through oranges, reds, whatever. In different brands, slightly different values. Okay. And that is the pink. I think that'll just go to about right there. Okay. Kind of going for that little horizon glow up there. Alright, let's go into rose pink. Alright, that was bubblegum pink, rose pink. I don't know if I need this. I mean, if you have like kind of these intermediate colors, intermediate meaning some color in between one and the next, you might as well just throw it in and see if you like it. If you like it, and if it makes a difference, then use more accordingly. Okay, and that's about it. You don't need to use too much. This pink right here, I'm quite familiar with, and it is really quite bright, so I'm going to use it a little bit more sparingly, I think. I want this to kind of look at kind of this purplish tinge color scheme. I really like kind of the browns and pinks used together like this. I think it makes for an interesting combination and color scheme. Brown's a really good foundation. Alright, that is pink from Marvy. Let's try red here. This is just called red. It's one of their most basic colors. It's the number 2 color. Not in terms of sales or anything like that, but just numerically they call this one number 2. In their numerical scheme. Remember, it doesn't look quite as red. I have a lot of the pinks in that brush. Tip, foam tip. There's the colors on the paper as well. Alright, here's brown. Brown will kind of knock things down and give it a little bit more of an earthy feel or finish. I want things to feel like it's kind of this, somewhat of this lost, I wouldn't say forbidden, but let me get a warm tone right here. Kind of like a place of mystery, like this destination, like this writer has kind of arrived at this mystical tree out in the middle of nowhere type of feeling. Okay, now this is getting a little bit, I don't know, it looks a little anemic to me, so I'm going to add some of this ochre. Naturally, ochre is going to have a little bit more yellow, yellowish tinge to it, right? So I'll add some of this in. Yeah, that did the trick, didn't it? See that right there? I mean, you can put it all over the place if you want to. I'll just kind of add it in, and if I like it, I'll add more. Okay. Maybe it looks kind of better, just somewhat streaky, where it's not in some areas and in some other areas. I don't know. I mean, it's all up to you how you apply this. I think it's kind of giving life to some of these areas, so yeah, maybe I'll use a little bit more like that. See, it kind of gave it, oh, I guess what it needed visually from a temperature standpoint. It filled in, didn't it? Sometimes you gotta just kind of tweak things and bump up the level of intensity. But it looks good over the distress inks too. The distress inks kind of give it a little bit more of a mellow feel, but you get the intensity from the brightness. All right, so we went in with the pinks. I did the brown on here. Did I do the brown on here already? I don't remember. If I did, I can add more, or if I don't see anything happening with it, then you just move on. Okay. Cherry. All right. Well, let me go with a plum. Plum didn't do very much. I see a slight change. Magenta, though, this can be quite a loud color, but no. Over the top of all these other ones, it's only a subtle change. Okay. Well, maybe not quite so subtle. It's doing its job. I don't use it too often, so I hardly ever have to re-ink it. And even not re-inking it, it's so juicy. Alright. Alright, this is my dark brown. Let's see, I wonder if I have a dark brown re-inker handy. I use this color quite a bit. Yeah, I've got another re-inker somewhere, but maybe I did re-ink it. That looks pretty dark right there. See that horizon right there? Alright, now this is the same dark brown ink color that I stamped out my cracked earth in, okay? But applying it this way, it looks much lighter, okay? Because this is a sponge, and also I have all the colors already in this pad, so I'm not getting a true straight version of it, but also because there's so many inks already on this card, you know, it's kind of achieved a super saturation, so it's not absorbing a lot of the dark brown instantly, okay? It's because it's like I'm kind of wiping wet into, you know, damp. Okay. That kind of horizon glow up there in the distance. All right. Let's try. Oh, let's go to this. This is really dark right here. It's violet. Okay. Try it in a little corner, and it reads as dark, but not too dark. And again, it's because this page is already fairly wet. Okay. Yeah, I have a lot of inks laid down on there. It's not super dry to, wet to the touch, but the pulp of the paper is starting to achieve somewhat of a super saturation. But as I do this, as I talk and do this, I mean, it is drying. These aren't super fast drying inks, but they're not slow either. Okay, looks like that. Let's try black here. Let's get that horizon a little bit of a stronger line. Horizon line. Okay, can you see that right there? It's a little bit stronger. We'll create a little bit of a separation between land and sky. Like that. And what we do is we can apply it down here as well. So that kind of a vignette type of effect where you hit the corners like that. Doesn't it make that interior seem that much lighter by contrast when you make the edges darker? One step darker, one step lighter by contrast. Doesn't make it physically lighter. You know, the lighting isn't kind of increasing there, it's just that you have something kind of darker next to it, so it looks, it appears as though it's much darker. It's the same thing if we're up here in the sky. See that right over there? It's making this kind of glow a little bit stronger. Okay, just kind of toning in some of those almost tiles. It's like nature's tiles. Alright, how does that look for a kind of a nice horizon glow? Look how rich and deep the color saturations are. Kind of creating a little bit of a stronger foundation down here. All right. A little bit more re-inker on my black pad. I want this impression to be pretty dark, so let's make sure that we have enough ink on our pad. I'm going to put this slightly off center and maybe even hanging off the top of the scene. I think I'm chopping off maybe a 1/4 inch or so off the top. Holding down, allowing that ink to transfer to the paper, because there's a lot of ink already laid down there, and I don't want to just place this down here kind of wet into damp and pull it off, and it's like a vacuum where a lot of the ink just kind of came back up with it because it didn't transfer to the paper. You don't need to hold on like this if you just stamp these out on a dry piece of paper that, hasn't been inked up yet, but there's a lot of buildup there, so kind of have to allow it to transfer, especially in these areas. Okay, so that's tree is just kind of standing as is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create kind of a pseudo shadow, okay? And I'll do it with the same stamp here. And I'll ink up in dark brown. Let's do something here too. Let's add a little bit of black to the base here, like so. Okay, and I'll make the rest of it brown. So I put a little bit of black down here. And I'm just going to try to match up those two trunks with these two. It's not going to be a perfect, mirror image, but I'm not worried about that. Alright, and the rest of it's brown, so it's like the same color we stamped out the cracked earth large in. Okay, so you see something like that. It's enough of a shadow for me. I mean, what we might do is, create a little bit of a differentiation there, a little extra color if we want to. Man, maybe I'll try some of that. Kind of hit the base of the tree. There's just some black on here, but I'll utilize some extra brown. I'll just kind of create a little bit of a separation. I'm kind of smearing the two trunks there too, but that's fine. I'll use some of the ink there. It's kind of smearing the shadow, but it stands to reason the shadow wouldn't be as crisp anyways. Okay. Just going like something like that. Alright, let's take some additional brown and tap it in there like so. I might give this a stronger horizon than that. Okay, maybe I'll use a piece of paper and actually formally mask off. Like so. We'll do a real straight horizon line here, but kind of taper it though. It's a little bit stronger on the edge, and then as it moves in, it kind of tapers off, okay? Alright, I went with the dark brown. Let's use some of that black. And then we'll probably need to even this out a little bit after I take the mask off, just so it isn't so incredibly sharp of a horizon. Okay, that looks better. Actually, that sharpness looks pretty good. So that kind of horizon back there. I'm trying to think if I want to take it even in there a little bit further. I guess it looks okay. Okay, so we have that. Let's take my writer. There's not really going to be too much to this composition, you know, from a stamping perspective. It's mostly about mood and it's about the color additions and whatnot. And we'll put the writer down here. I think I want to... I'm trying to think if I want to have her kind of right on the edge here, or if I want her down a little bit further. Yeah, let's go ahead and put her... Let's go ahead and put her right over here. Okay. Now I'm stamping this figure in Versafine Black. It's just a super, super dark black ink. It's a pigment ink, an oil pigment ink. Okay, so she is really dark and stands up against that background. Okay. I think I'll leave that as is. I'm thinking about, you know what I think? I think I want to do this in a series. This will be like summer or something like that. Not that it's supposed to be the same time, but I want it to have different feels. I'm thinking about this same scene, but in snow, and maybe another one where it's grass and spring. I think that might be interesting to do this as a somewhat of a triptych type of lesson here. So, first scene done, and I'll think about the other ones to accompany this, and I'll stay with the same type of composition. As I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about putting an additional cloud in the background. I think that might be kind of interesting to have a little bit of extra texture in here. It's looking a little anemic to me. Let's try. Let's go with this cloud cumulus. Okay. And let's go with our trusty masking system. We'll place it about like so. Okay. I'm going to have a lot of that horizon showing because it's, you know, just a dark brown. So again, here that is, and see how I'm not going all the way up here. I have some of that horizon showing like that because if I stamp the cloud into it, it won't be any big deal. Let's go with about kind of this top portion. I have to stamp it dark enough where it's going to show, but I don't want it so dark that it obscures everything else. Okay, something like that. So it adds a little bit of extra texture like so. I thought I was doing it in dark brown, but I actually inked it up in black, but the black looks pretty good there, I think. Maybe it stands out a little bit more bold. And just one impression, if I do it over there, I think it'd look okay, but I think this looks better like that. Okay, so one scene down. I'll do 3 more. It'll be maybe the 4 seasons. All right, let's get started with our second season for this 4-scene series. All right, let's see here. We're going to try to keep this pretty close to the original in terms of the composition, so I'm talking about that tree being right up here. Okay. And let's do it like we did the first one, okay? Let's, well, the first one we stamped the foundation first. Let's go, well, there's all kinds of different ways you can approach scenes, obviously, and I can be quite indecisive at times. It's because there's just so many different ways you can go, and there's no really any right or wrong way to do it, so. Alright, this is weathered wood. This pad might be too dry for me to use. Okay, this one's really dry. I found this in my teaching supplies. I hadn't pulled it out in years and years. Alright, so let's move to a Bahama blue. Okay, and we'll go with roughly kind of the same horizon line that was on the first. Okay. This is a snow pattern right here. And it's not going to be of terrible importance in the end result. It's just kind of providing me a little bit of variation, okay? Than just having a kind of a blank surface here. And I just feel that when you get something like that in place, it's just, it provides a little bit more of a rich kind of surface area in the end result, no matter how buried in tone it might be. And in this case, it will be quite buried in tone. Alright, so let's start off with a good foundation again. Let's go with a warm tone here. I could just go with just straight blue tones, and I often do, but I want to keep some kind of semblance of continuity with each scene from both a composition and color perspective, okay? They're going to be completely different colors, but they can have something in common, okay? So maybe it'll be this antique linen here. Alright, let's do something. This is antique linen right here. It's kind of going on a little bit slower than I'd like. I can get some a little bit re-inker fluid like that. Splash some over there, might as well use it. Okay, now I put a couple drops on this. My applicator is really brand new too, so kind of getting a little bit of tone on there. Makes things just go so much faster. You can do this with a paper towel if you'd like. Makeup sponges, makeup brushes, they're good for certain things, certain looks, but I feel they apply ink relatively slow. And they're just kind of made for a different type of media as opposed to a wet media. But you can try. Paper towels work great, though. Oops. There goes my card onto the floor. All right, here we go. Not very wintry at all, I would say. Okay, let's see here. milled lavender. It's a little bit of a, looks like a pinkish tinge. Kind of an old antiqued violet. It's really, really light in value. Can't see anything. Slightly, but not much. Oh, there it comes. I don't think, I mean, sometimes, or a lot of times, there are colors that just aren't really contributing, just simply for the fact that I'm layering them over much darker tones, so it doesn't really read, but it can add up to a nice rich kind of surface area as a whole when you do that like that. Alright, let's stay with the distress inks here. Let's go with the tumbled glass, which I like quite a bit. These are kind of cool little applicators in the spirit of kind of antiqued, types of inks. These little bottles like that. There's something to glass, too, that I really like. Probably cost them more to make it that way. So I gotta give props to Ranger for putting them out in glass. I wouldn't be disappointed, though, if they moved to plastic out of necessity in the future, but it's kind of cool that there is kind of that type of thought went into the the Ranger bottle from a thematic standpoint. I'm trying to remember, were Distress Inks originally, there was some kind of ink pad that came in like a tin. Was that Distress Inks, or was that a different brand of, or line of pads? Now that I'm thinking about it. Oh, I know what it was. There was some line of inks that were scented. Man, I have no idea who those were from, but I do seem to recall using them. I'm looking on my shelves right now. I haven't seen those for years, so I don't think I have any, but this is a broken china, a little bit of a darker value. I just remember using those sometimes. I think it was more kind of novelty. It was like for kids or something. And I don't remember how they worked or anything like that, but when using them, quite extensively in terms of the color buildup, it was too much. It really just, it wasn't meant to be used like this. You were meant to stamp images on there, so you get this kind of light scent, based on the amount of ink you used, which wouldn't be too much when it comes just, to impressions, but it was just so strong in terms of the fragrance. I almost couldn't stand it. But they were pretty cool, though, and the smell did kind of was reminiscent of the scents that they were depicting. Alright, that was Broken China. I was just using the lid of the antique linen here. Let's try a Bahama Blue Memento. Going a little bit darker than I thought I would on this one. But, I don't know, maybe it'll match up thematically with the first scene. Thematic in terms of my lighting in here. Alright, let's grab some blue tones. This is way too dark here. So let me go through another tone first. Okay, this is Blueprint Sketch, and that's really quite dark. I tell you what, this is something that I haven't done enough of, but I should. experiment with more. All right, that's a little bit of blueprint sketch there, okay? And let's add a little bit of this broken china into it. Like that. It's kind of a fusion of the two. Physically fusing, okay? And we'll mix that up. I have no idea how this is going to work. It could be just that, you know, that blueprint sketch might be super dominant. Okay, no, it looks more kind of in the spirit of blueprint sketch, but it has the value of the broken china, so it just kind of makes it a little bit darker. Right. I just re-inked my Prussian blue, so that's why I'm kind of hesitating here. I just know that's really dark. Okay, I'll just take a little bit of it and try to utilize it accordingly. All right, let's go ahead with that masking technique that we did in the first one. Let me see if I can match it up. Well, they're pretty well matched up. Almost exactly. Okay. Okay. Prussian blue horizon line. Almost looks like an ocean. Could be. Could easily be. Maybe that'll kind of lend itself to the kind of the overall spirit of the piece. It's kind of giving me the feeling of kind of one of those northern kind of areas where, like during the you know, the winter time, it's just like always dark. Or during certain areas, maybe it, you know, that's as kind of light as it gets during the daytime. Real kind of diffusion. I don't like the range of intensity that I've achieved right here, though. It looks, to me, this looks really anemic and boring, no matter what I put on there. So let's pull out the one of the most intense blues right here, and that's in number 10. Light blue from Marvy. This pad's almost had it. It's really starting to kind of collapse. Alright, do you see that kind of intensity right there? That's your Marvy pads for you, or Marvy inks. It's just one ink, and you can see it kind of just brightens up everything overall. Okay. Call it just what the doctor ordered right there. And this is, you know, like I said, this is, could be a, you could do a, this could represent an ocean, you know, if we took it in that direction. All right, let's go back to that Prussian blue again. I'm getting all these little crumbly things on my paper. All right, let's go back to that mask again. I know this Prussian blue can get quite a bit darker. Here it comes. Okay. I need to go in far enough to the point where I can apply some black into it. So the lighter tones need to go into it quite a bit more. And Prussian blue is really dark to begin with, but it's not as dark as black, so I needed to give this, give some space to black in here. And here comes the black. Okay. Now this is a great exercise for just doing these this motion, this streaky motion, just because there's a huge area to fill in here. And, it kind of gets you to utilize your kind of ink application technique, if this is kind of the methodology you're using on a given card. Okay, kind of hitting the little corners of the scene. Alright, mask off again. Now don't go in to the scene quite as far as you did with the previous color. Okay, so stay a little bit more kind of perimeter oriented. Okay, just something like that. I usually don't like wiping from this angle right here because I usually like to stroke downward, but being that I have the mask in place, it's not any big deal just to do a few swipes like this. This isn't, as ergonomic as, holding it from the opposite end and kind of dragging down. This is very comfortable. This is not really as much. Okay, I think that looks good. So let's get that tree stamped out. Okay, let's see. Show where it is in relations. About right here. This is going off the side, that's going off the top. Okay. Tempted to do this one in Prussian blue. Let's try it in that. Let's go with the Prussian blue for this tree instead of black. Maybe it'll give it kind of a cool, kind of an icy look, maybe. Oh, I don't know. We can transition a little bit. I'll put some black on it too. And let's wipe off the bottom of these trunks here. Okay. Or maybe it represents they're kind of submerged in the snow a little bit. It's almost kind of cool to put this in water. It'd be kind of interesting. It wouldn't really represent winter, but I don't know. It might look kind of interesting. Nevertheless. All right. I'm tempted to go for a second impression. Like this. Let's kind of wipe off some of it. Like that. Let me see if I can get a little bit of a impression of it a second time for, to represent some shadows. I'm not sure if it'll stamp out at all. I did transfer most of the ink on the first impression, so let's see. If it's very subtle, that's fine. Okay, it's okay. I do like the whimsy of it. I'm looking at it right now, kind of assessing. I think it looks pretty good. All right. Thinking about doing some of these little scraggly little bushes. This winter brush here. Let's go ahead and do that. So this image like that, it's just like a spindly little brush you can use in your foreground or midground, wherever you want to put it. I'll wipe off some of this bottom portion so that it's a little bit more submerged in the snow. That's the way it looks good. Here. Okay. Let's create a little bit of a foggy feel to this because from a textural standpoint, this looks okay, but we can add a lot more atmosphere to it. I have a cotton ball. We'll go with some white pigment ink. Okay. We'll add it where kind of dark meets light. So there's a lot of kind of lightness right in this area right here, and then we have those trees, the oak tree. And see what that does? It really kind of gives it a kind of frosty kind of essence where you have this kind of low-lying fog and it's being illuminated by that little bit of light in the scene. And I'll kind of transition this out into the darker areas. Okay. Kind of really adding quite a bit right to the base of the tree. Okay, I think that's right. Just from a textural standpoint, let's make it a little bit more interesting, though. Let's go with a little bit of a bleed-proof white. It's something that you can give your scene a kind of extra essence instantly with a fun technique in splatter painting. Looks like I need a little bit of water in here. Bleed-proof white is an opaque white watercolor paint, and I've just reconstituted it with some water. You don't need to, you can feel it's kind of caked in there. You just need to kind of reconstitute the top portion of it and get it to a consistency of like thick syrup, maple syrup or something like that. The thinner it is, the smaller the dots will be. So if you want kind of a little bit of variation, kind of make it a little bit thicker, but I don't know, you can kind of experiment around. I just use a paintbrush. And this is a small card, so we don't need too much of this. Alright, now this is just going to represent some snowfall in here. A lot of times I use it for stars or something like that, or at the base of a waterfall, but in this one, I'm just kind of going for an overall type of splattering. Okay. So let's see if hold it up. About, what is that? Maybe 5 inches away from the surface. It's something like this. It's a lot of fun to do. It can really make your scene look quite dynamic from a textural standpoint by applying something like that. Alright, so we're going to have to get a pretty good impression of this writer, so I'll go with a Versafine. Versafine's a pigment ink, very, very dark, and very effective for depicting very close objects, something very near. Alright, let's see. I have her going up about 1/4 inch from the bottom on this scene right here. I need to spray this. Look how much she stands out, though, from the background. Okay. Right. She is 2 down, 2 more to go. Maybe we'll do spring next. Let me see. I don't know what this is. Maybe summer, huh? Everything's scorched. Yeah, summer and fall, perhaps. So springtime, or spring and fall. Springtime should be easy. We're going to do a lot of grasses, kind of growth, life and rejuvenation, etc. And the next one, and that should be fun, just like all these are. I love doing these types of series. I don't do them too often, but I like doing things kind of in a thematic standpoint. Oftentimes I don't do the same composition over and over like this one, but this one I thought, well, it's a fairly simple composition. We're talking about basically two designs, that are kind of static, through the all of them, the coloring schemes and everything like that. The lighting schemes will be the same. And then we'll just take a look and see what they look like as a whole, as a, I don't know, seasonal series, I guess. All right, so 2 down, like I said, 2 more to go. All right, let's get started on spring here. All right, let's stamp out our imagery first. Okay. And I think I'll do that in maybe a medium shade and a darker shade of green. All right, I'm going to go with the grass texture for my foreground. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. I want a little bit of extra texture and larger forms, so I'll do it with this one right here. And then we'll use the sedge filler stamp for the background and midground. Okay. And let's roughly, or try to get that grass up here fairly close to what we have established as our horizon line with the other 2 scenes. Okay, so we have this. Let's take a look here. Yeah, it looks pretty close. Maybe I'll go up a little bit more here. All right, a lot of texture. And that'll provide us with a great foundation to color the various forms in here, okay? Now, here's the thing that I always mention in my videos that I've realized at some point in time in the past, is that a lot of times people think of whole spaces, and it's because they've come from kind of a technique where they're filling in entire areas using outline stamps for the most part. Okay, if it's a dress or something like that and a character, they're filling that whole thing in. If it's a basket or something like that, let's say coming up Easter, they'll color that whole thing kind of a uniform brown or tan or something like that. Okay, and then they might add in a few shadows or something of that sort. So in something like this, it's certainly a version of doing that, except you're representing lighting as well. So you're establishing a different thing. In landscape stamping, you're establishing kind of larger spaces. It's not just representative of a small space on like a character, okay? So there's much more opportunities for variation in terms of value, okay? So in this one right here, in other words, we're going to retain some areas of light, okay, in both sky and ground. Okay, now I'm going to go into this with, I just realized this is old paper right here. Have I been using that same one? I thought it was antique linen. Maybe that's why I had to use that re-inker. I just re-inked my antique linen. Antique linen and old paper, they're so similar. I probably didn't need to get both, but alright. Antique linen. Okay. We use this as our common base coat for all 4 scenes. Okay. This is a great color, really pale colors that can make a difference in terms of the overall color scheme, lighting scheme, temperature scheme are really good ones to start off with, and this one is a good one to do that with. You can It's fairly pale, so it's not really bright, okay, at all. And it does have that warm tint to it. So if you want something really subtle, it's really great. A lot of people start coloring with this one and they think, oh my gosh, it's not dark enough. So they start scrubbing with their brushes, and that's not what that does. This is as dark as it gets because that's the color of the ink. But what's great about that is it allows you to establish a lighting scheme without making a big commitment to a given value. And if you go too far with this one, it's so light, it doesn't really matter, you know, if you color in the whole thing. We don't want you doing that, but if you do it, not a big deal. Okay, let's try some peeled paint right here. It's kind of a earthy green. Okay, establish that on the horizon, and we'll kind of oscillate our lights and darks throughout this. In other words, you just kind of leave some areas lighter, okay? It doesn't have to be a big, huge hole in the middle there, okay? But you just kind of come across it like this, and doesn't it look like the lighting is hitting some of these tufts of grass? You know, it's not just one big flat surface, but there's variations in it, so you have lights and darks. It's no different than my hand here, you know, there's going to be lights and darks on this, and shadows, you know, the way light falls on it. So if you have this kind of wavy pattern, you can almost think of it as like a fabric across the surface of the landscape with little hills and valleys. Alright, now I didn't take that into my sky. I'll retain that area up there for blue. Maybe we should get to that. Let's try some summer sky. Summer sky is very light in value as well. I don't know if I have a re-inker for this. I believe I do. It's one of my main Memento inks. I'm trying to find it. I have this little corner on my desk for commonly used colors. Okay, I'm going to use this in the grass as well. It's not that we want blue grass, but I want a little tint of that color in the sky so it creates a continuity between these two zones. And blue is certainly a component of green. Okay. This is another one that's really, really pale in value, so sometimes, like I said, when people don't see a very obvious mark, okay, like they would see on white paper, okay, they tend to think that nothing's coming off, so they start scrubbing it. But scrubbing something does not apply ink to your paper, especially on glossy cardstock. If you're doing that on glossy cardstock, you're probably removing ink because you're just scrubbing, you know, and you're kind of lifting off. If you want to get a really thick saturation, what you do is you tap it like that, and it leaves little beads of ink built up on your surface. Alright, this is... The colors of these inks aren't really so important. This is celery, okay? What I'm doing is I'm building up colors going from light to dark. So it's the thing that's kind of key here is, in terms of the process, is that I'm just kind of working through a value scheme. Light greens, medium, darker greens, and I just use whatever I have. If I didn't have some of these, then I'd be fine. You know, if I had different brands, I would just use those. I just kind of line them up, and I start applying them from light to dark. It would be like saying, I don't know, we do this in we use all kinds of different things in daily life, so I'm not quite sure why people get kind of locked up into specifics when it comes to crafts. Like, let's say I was baking some bread, and someone uses a certain brand of flour, I mean, there's different types of flours out there. There's whole wheat, but if it's just like your general all-purpose, it's like, well, can I use this brand of all-purpose, instead of this brand? And yeah, you can. Or, I don't know, different brands of seasonings or spices, You can certainly mix and match, and I would always encourage you to. Because if I were to do this one again, I don't know if I would use the same colors, or if I was out of some, it could come out looking a little different. That's for sure, but this isn't some kind of like set formula that I'm going off of. Every time I've done grass before, it's probably, it's used a little bit differently, different combinations, different amounts of certain types of colors. You might use more of jungle green, laid out than you did, in another grassy terrain. All right, so that was turquoise. Let's go back to this number 4 green. I don't even remember what green I stamped out my textures with. It might have been this one. In fact, I think it is. Coming up here, maybe after this color, I'll show you kind of my little technique. Let's call it a secret. I say it. I try to get everyone to do it every time I do grass. But the thing that I do for any type of green terrain like that, grassy terrain, it never looks right to me just with using greens. So the thing that I like to use is brown in it. Okay. I think it gives it kind of more of an earthy type of feel to it. Okay. It's just too hot green. Grass does not look like that unless it's like some really bad astroturf or something like that. And then that's not really grass, is it? See that right there? It's kind of that. I'll show you from one side to the other. Yeah. That just, it looks a little anemic or something. It's not as rich or realistic. Okay, so we want some of this in here. Just use your browns. If you have a distress, like a walnut would be good. There's a lot of like distress inks out there that would be good for this. Okay, so I'm actually adding quite a big slathering of it like that. See that right there? So kind of a more mellow looking kind of overall quality to that. Here's dark brown right here. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, even better, I think. Giving it a nice like horizon line up here. Now, I'm adding brown on this. I mean, if you're doing like high noon or something like that, it's really light and airy outside, then you don't need to add, go this dark. I'm going to have this one match kind of thematically the other two scenes that have already been established in terms of their kind of lighting. So I want this to be different enough in terms of the season to contrast against them, but I want them similar enough to match up, from a kind of a lighting theme. Okay. You see the touch of blue in here? There's just a tinge of it. I mean, that's the blue up there. I still need to apply blues in here, but see what this brown is doing, though? Doesn't it look kind of like a more mellow, rich kind of surface area now? All right, let me see here. I need a clean applicator. I just cleaned off some of these, but These sponge tips really hold the ink really well. That's why they work good. But sometimes when you clean them off, you really have to kind of tap all of that, work all that ink out of the material, the fabric. All right, let's see here. Let's re-establish some of the moisture content for the top here, the blue, because it got really dry up there. And I need to establish some of the moisture content so that these darker colors that I use will flow easier on them. Okay. This one's Bahama Blue. It looks really light because I have a lot of summer sky already established on there, so it's not applying to the surface of the paper as fast because it's kind of moist, so you're kind of going wet into wet. All right, this is the Bahama Blue. Let's use some of this Bahama Blue down here too to establish that continuity. Okay. And again, if you go Bahama Blue over green, it's not going to look Bahama Blue. It's going to be some sort of incarnation of a blue mixed with all those different colors of green and browns that we have down there. It just kind of links up the two a little bit more. Okay, you see a little bit of blue in here, and that's what connects it to the sky. It doesn't look like just green down here and blue up there. Two very, unconnected and unrelated areas, between land and sky. So bring some of the colors from your sky down into your land. You don't necessarily bring that up into the sky, but you certainly can in some instances. All right. This is a very bright blue. It's number 10 blue from Marvy. Okay, it's somewhat similar to Bahama Blue, but it is more intense. Okay, Marvy colors, just in general, as a general statement, are pretty strong and saturated. Okay, so a little streak that I put across there, like that too. You can kind of do these little streaks like this, and that kind of gives you that kind of atmospheric little variation in that given area. That's what I'm doing down here. I'm kind of putting streaks down here, with my grass. All right, this is Prussian blue. It's super dark. I'm going to blot this off a lot before I use it in here. So you can control the amount of ink you apply just by certainly removing it, or simply removing it off of your applicator. Okay, so really utilize kind of dry brushing that technique when you move up into certain types of colors. Okay, you can kind of do a dry brush technique to begin with, and then as you get the feel of it, then you can kind of add more direct. But anytime you change colors, especially in your darker tones, kind of get a feel for them, get a feel for what you're doing with those colors, like Prussian blue especially. There's certain types of blue, like distressing. So there's one called Blueprint Sketch, super dark, really great, but you have to be careful about the application of it because it can get really dark really fast. See, I like these kind of like corners right here, darker. I feel it contains the scene really nicely. And just those little tiny areas. You see I'm kind of working this area for a long time? I mean, it's not real long, but relatively speaking. See this right here? I'm just staying there. And that gives me that nice kind of tapered edge like that. Okay, you just stay in one area and just kind of work it. See this right here? And I'm kind of working the edge, You can do this with the paper towel too. You just kind of lightly dab like that. And then it just kind of pulls that ink out. I'm getting a little bit of variation in the landscape. Okay. See that blue down there? It creates that nice, strong connection with the area above. Okay, I might have some other greens out there, but I've got this gigantic stack of stamps on my desk. It looks like I'm doing like Jenga or something like that with the stamps, so I don't want to knock those over. Let's go down here with a little bit more green. I feel it's kind of losing some of that green intensity, which I do like, but I just liked it a little bit more mellow. So you can go back to lighter colors if you wanted to, although this isn't a light color, but it's lighter than the ones I just applied. Okay. All right. There we go. And I think we're ready for our trees. Or tree. I'm just going to do this in... It would be good to do it in brown, but it's going to have to be dark enough to stand up against that ink all that ink that I've just laid down. So let's just do this in black. And for spring, I'm going to add in a lot of different effects to it with paint pens and whatever. We'll try to make it look like spring blossoms. So I think I'm going to let this kind of dry before I do that a little bit. It's not sopping wet, but it's just easier to apply inks to gel pen inks to a dry surface. Okay, now I'm removing some of the ink off the bottom of this tree. Okay, that's just my general tweak. Something's standing in grass, you wipe off the bottom a little bit. I try to do it with a dry paper towel, and then that way it kind of transitions down like this. It doesn't look like you've just stamped it right on top of like concrete or something like that, something really stiff. Okay, people and animals, you just kind of wipe their legs off or feet, for the most part. Okay. Can you see that kind of transitions like that? Okay. Let's go with some additional grass here. Let's do this right here. Let's do a fusion. Let's go green on here. Okay. Okay. Like that. We're going to go multi-value here for some foreground grass, and we'll go black. Okay. So it gives you a little bit of extra depth, and then the character is going to go right here. But I think I might want to get some other things established first. Or do I? I change my mind about this all the time. I was thinking, if I start putting wildflowers in here, and then I stamp her, right here, I don't want those flowers to be showing through. Sometimes you don't get a really crisp impression right over the top of things like gel pens touches. So if I put her down there, I know where to work around. Maybe I'll do that. Okay. I'm trying to think if things didn't get so dark, so I think I'm going to go with dye-based ink here as opposed to the Versafine. Alright, now on the base of this one I do have kind of established a little bit of grass down here at the base of that horse, so I could just stamp it out as is, but I think I'm going to wipe that off a little bit though. Like that, just so it stamps out a little bit lighter, like the grass is kind of a little bit higher. Okay. Very nice. In terms of the impression. We're going to fill in this field full of wildflowers. It definitely needs some color variation and something kind of to stand out against this background. Or maybe I'll put a bunch of like pink blossoms in here and put a lot of them underneath the tree like it's fallen down. We'll make this scene hopefully come alive with some additional forms. It wouldn't look bad in here with some of that Dr. Martin's bleed proof white, like little clusters of little white flowers too. Alright, so anyways, we'll let this dry sufficiently before we start adding in some of those extra effects, so give it a little bit of time to dry. Okay, I'm back a few hours later. Took a little bit longer break than I thought I would. But, let's see here. Now this is dried really anemic, okay? But, if I were to spray this, it would get much darker. That being said, I think that I will try to do some tweaks here to, just to enhance the overall look of everything, and to just give it a little bit more kind of emphasis in some areas. Where we've added a lot of tone, it's really kind of it's gotten very muted in terms of the sharpness in here. So I've gone back in with the grass texture and added a few little impressions in here. That will kind of dry out too, but when I spray it, it will all look, or it should look, you know, somewhat similar to how it looks now. But the contrast between this impression that you can see now, you know, these real kind of faded ones, it will decrease because the colors in the background will become much darker and look a little bit closer to those impressions that are really standing out. All right, now that tree there is really standing out to me, so let's go in here and add some shading underneath it, okay? Now, I've left it pretty light underneath there. I was thinking about some fog and mist, but maybe it would be more important to come into those areas with some shading. So what we do is, because it's so light, what you want to do is you want to kind of address that these darker tones incrementally. So let's start off with the lightest ones again. We don't have to go through the entire spectrum. You know, that's not what I'm about to do at this point in time in the process. So I'll just work through a couple light tones, and then we'll probably go to about a medium tone, I guess. Okay. this is the celery. Yeah. Alright, that looks a little bit darker than I thought it was going to get when I smudged it right there. So let me just blend that in a little bit more. See how dark that's going to get. Now, if I were to spray this area up here would be this dark, or it should be. Okay. Because remember, I mean, this is not a dark color celery, so this is just kind of wetting the surface, and we can see kind of a better indicator of just, you know, what the value is in that space based on the colors that have been applied. Okay. Alright, so that's celery. Let's go to, did I use this color right here? Light green. I don't even know if I did. Light green is a really bright color. Well, if I did or not, I am adding it now, and that should warm things up quite a bit. I do like light green a lot, but it's just too light on its own, so I really like it in conjunction with other colors over the top of it. It's just too hot, but it provides a really great foundation. Okay, so that shadow kind of starting to take place right there. Looks a little bit better and better. Kind of the more you anchor things down. Okay. Quite a bit different in terms of the intensity. Alright, let's go to dark brown. Switch that black cap here with the one that's not written on. Going with black in the, or dark brown in the corners again. Okay. All right. Let me try a little bit of this peel paint. Okay, it'll be peel paint and dark brown and all those other colors because I'm just using the same applicator here, but okay. Okay, I think that will do it. Now let's try to bring everything together a little bit more. Okay, so there's different approaches to this. I have this these paint pens here, Sharpie paint pens. And these tend to work pretty good. I like gel pens better for certain things, and paint pens better for other things. Sometimes applying things on top of the surface works pretty good with your paint pens because it leaves a application of that ink built up on the surface, okay? Gel pens are roller balls, so sometimes rolling things on has to be done with a thinner ink. But that being said, sometimes the thinners good because it's more translucent. You can see the colors through it a little bit better. So I don't know. You can use both of them in conjunction, with one another for both types of effects. Like I want these little pink little highlights to really stand out, though. So I think it'll just kind of illuminate the scenes. Just kind of cluster them in. Oh yeah, and let's put some up here on these branches as well. These little pink little blossoms. Springtime, of course. I don't know what they are. Could be little cherry blossoms or something. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, this is an oak tree, but we're just utilizing it for, whatever type of tree we want it to be. Fantasy tree. Making the tree come alive, huh? It's kind of fun to add these little touches. All right, let's add some on the ground as well. These little blossoms kind of falling to the grassy surface. Okay, but little spring blossoms can be found in other areas of the grass, maybe. Kind of brings the whole piece alive, and should really contrast it with other areas of the scene, and especially the other scenes in this quartet of visuals. Getting this flowing here, it kind of gave me a much wider dot. I kind of liked it clogged a little bit more. This ink is really flowing now, kind of utilizing it here, so it's giving me a little bit of a larger dot than I'd want, but let's utilize that for the areas where I want it to be very prominent. Mainly on these branches. Okay, look at that. Okay, that was pink, pastel pink. Let's see if this one's working. This is lavender. It's almost working too much. It's too thick. Okay, here we go. So, kind of pink and purple. You can kind of cluster it together, or you can have it separate, however way you want. This one's a little bit darker. Okay. Now, all right. Let's see what we can do here. Let me see if these MIaosuns are working well. My first one kind of, maybe I used it up or something like that. It doesn't seem like it's quite as white to me. But I've used it quite a bit since I bought these, and they are really inexpensive. I think they sell them like packs of 10 or something like that. I think I bought a pack of 5 white ones and 5 black ones or something like that. Okay, let's see if this is going here. Kind of it has a spring release, so you kind of just press it down like that and get some of that paint to go into the reservoir, or into the tip from the reservoir. Okay, here it comes. Oh, perfect. Look at that. Actually, that's working great. My other one, it seems like it's had it. It didn't give me a lot of use, but it worked really well while it was working. So, like I said, though, these pens are really inexpensive. Okay, let's add some of these white blossoms. Kind of overlapping some of the pink. It's like an apple blossom. It's more white than pink, so pink is kind of like in there. So maybe I'll use a little bit more white. And same with cherry too. Actually, that looks really good. Using these 2 or 3 colors together. It could have been just, the 2, white and pink. Would have been fine. But if you have it and you have any questions, you might as well try it out and see how it looks. Okay. It's probably the most I've added to a tree before, but the tree is just such an important element in the scene, and the different looks of it, that I'm really kind of addressing it quite a bit. I mean, there's not a lot going on in these scenes, so we want to make the things, the elements that are in them, really substantial from a visual standpoint. It's like dressing it up or whatever, to really kind of stand out as the as a focal point. Okay, white pigment ink here. Alright, let me try to keep this within the field. Let me zoom out of here a little bit so I don't forget about it and working out of frame. Isn't that kind of nice? A little frosty type of look. Let's add some back in the distance as well. Maybe we'll make it kind of cut down the transition between earth and sky. We're just kind of putting it back there in the veil of fog on the horizon. A little bit of fog right here for some illumination. I'm thinking about what I want to do for the next one. Okay, I think that is good. Good enough for right now. And, alright, let's add a little bit more foreground in here with some of the Versafine Black, okay? Some of the Marvy Black got a little obscured with the tone of the pigment ink. And plus this Versafine Black is darker than the Marvy Black anyway, so... yeah, look at that. Look how much depth is in there with green, black impressions, and then the Versafine Black right over the front of it like that. Let's go like that there too. Right here on the side. A great day for a ride. Okay. So we have 3 working right now. Now here's what I'm going to have to consider. It's thematically. Sorry, I need to figure out what I want to do from a thematic standpoint. They're all quite different. But what is the 4th one that will kind of fit into this really nicely? It's different enough to make a 3rd one, or 4th one, kind of worthwhile. Maybe, I don't know. I could put leaves on a tree and say that's summer, and this is like fall or something like that. This, I mean, this looks beyond fall here. And plus, I mean, I could have done like fall foliage on that one too, but maybe some kind of browns or something like that. Yeah, I think a brown color scheme would look pretty good. This looks like Inferno or something like that. I don't know. It could just represent something else too. It doesn't have to represent, like traditional seasons, like winter, summer. You know what I mean? It could be the passage of time in this person's life. They visited the tree, at different times in their life. Or everything could just be symbolic too. It's like, what is this about? Is it about the writer, or is it about the tree? Which one's the kind of the main subject matter? Hard to say. It's all kind of up to the interpretation of the viewer a lot of times too. Let me do something with that paint pen here too. I'm going to add some additional little white, little reflective marks on this one. Now that I got a pen that's working great. And some highlights here and there. The background is fairly light, so these little dots don't stand out too much, but they stand out enough from a textural standpoint to make it worthwhile to add in there, I think. And we can also kind of add a little bit of a kind of snow building up on some of these branches, maybe. I kind of like to do it right in the intersections of where a branch kind of comes in contact with the trunk. All right, and just little touches in here. Doing these little dots like that can kind of give it a little something in common with this one too. There's so many dots in there. You can do it in here. I think I want to do something too, maybe on some of this splatter painting. Let's get a few larger dots in here, just for a little bit of a contrast in size, and I think it can certainly represent kind of early snow or something of that sort. Okay, a little bit of snowfall like so. But you see what the contrast of those dots did in here? Just creates kind of a more, I don't know, a rich surface when you have different types of elements, but they're similar in some aspect. Size, color, whatever shape. But then if you do them in multiple sizes, it also kind of adds to the continuity, but it also contrasts against similar shapes, in that there's large and small in there. So it's about extending the range of certain things in here. I mean, I didn't have like some kind of gigantic ball in there, but it's different enough where it stands out, instead of it just being like a spray pattern, of the exact same size. Okay, so I have one scene to go, and I don't know, I'm going to think about this one for a little bit and try to come up with a color scheme that's going to fit in with these pieces here. There's all kinds of different possibilities too. I mean, I could do it. Yeah, maybe I'll do it where there's some kind of different element too. I've been doing light beams or something like that. That could be, coming into play here too. And I'm going to try to think of an order too, by which we look at these pieces as well. So, anyways, a few things to contemplate. Okay, I think I have an idea for a fourth composition that'll look different enough from these, but similar enough where it kind of merges in with the pieces. And I was thinking about kind of a real foggy grayscale type of scenario here. All right, we're going to start off with the Seaside Cove small stamp, okay? I'm going to do this in gray. Yeah. I was kind of wondering if it was going to be too light, but I want it to be kind of light in here. I'm going to wipe off the rocks in here for what will end up being a dual impression. Okay, so I'm going to use this one, this lighter impression, kind of up here towards the top. About like so. I'm going to try to match it up with the horizon line of the previous scenes. Pretty big design, so you have to get plenty of pressure on there, okay? So we'll have that. And I think I'm going to go for another impression. I don't know. These really don't match up perfectly like this, but you can use it like this. Okay, what I mean by that is, I'm going to, let me use a wet paper towel here to really get that off of here. Okay. So we're going to extend this. It won't extend perfectly, but it'll be good enough. Okay, then I'll use some more of this bottom portion here. Kind of blot off this top portion. Okay, I think I have it inked up roughly about halfway. Okay, so I'll be using about half of it down this way, I think. Alright, so there's half. Okay, so maybe I'll go up a little bit more than half. Okay, so we have that. I know it kind of looks weird. There's a pretty definitive line right here, but we have so much shading to do anyway that it shouldn't matter. Okay. I'd say a lot of things matter, when you first stamp out your compositions, but they don't matter as much as you think they would. So a lot of people, they get discouraged, midway through their scene or whatever. A lot of times it's instantaneous, but they're never off course from what I've seen, okay? It's just they haven't kind of finished things off. You just need to kind of work with things and let them develop and see where they get to. I always kind of make the analogy, you'd never kind of, you get some child, that you're teaching and things like that. You don't get discouraged because they don't know their algebra, at, 2 years old or something like that. That's a bad analogy, but I do see scenes that way sometimes. It's like you're bringing them through kind of you know, a certain type of process. Okay, now this is antique linen, so we're still going to hit this with the antique linen, even though this isn't going to be really a colorful scene. But this will give kind of our grayscale color scheme. Hopefully a nice base, a warm base, so it'll be kind of like warm grays in here, and that'll give us that one similar thing in terms of a, you know, color continuity between this and the other pieces. Okay, it could also be the thing that's kind of dulling things out. You know, sometimes there's certain types of inks that kind of dull. They dull dry. You know, but if you spray this, it'll be fine, and it'll enhance what you already have. But yeah, the distress inks, they kind of dry real dull when you build them up like this. Most of the Ranger ones do. There's something in the binder, but like I said, they work well in terms of you know, if you spray them, and you know, you can get that vibrancy out of them. But going back to what I was saying, you just kind of want to let things develop slowly and give them time. I mean, this certainly doesn't look like a great scene right now. I don't know if it will be a great scene, but I'm just saying that, you know, it'll look better, you know, the more you develop it. Okay, this is just London Fog Memento. It's kind of giving it, it looks a little bit more beige than gray at this point in time. Okay. Let's go with the Marvy gray. This will be the gray that we colored and stamped our objects in, our Seaside Cove in. Kind of trying to get in between some of these waves. Kind of coming around. I mean, the darker we make it, the more kind of the elements come together. You see my lighting scheme starting to develop too. We have a kind of a lighter in here by the horizon, then I have some areas that look a little bit lighter in here. You know, you kind of streak across there to kind of divide up the two zones as well. Okay, I'm going to get a pretty good saturation because I'm going to start addressing the surface with black. So I want to really develop that gray first, just so that the black will have something to kind of glide on, you know. It'll have a nice kind of wet foundation. Okay, let's take a piece of paper. Let's mask this off here. Try to create a little bit of a stronger horizon. Okay. Alright, kind of developing there, so that strong horizon there with the masking. Here's a ink right on here. Okay. If I can get it darker using the existing ink, whatever ink I'm currently using, I'll just apply more of that. When it just you know, isn't getting any darker using that existing color, then I know to move on to my next tone. And in this case, it's going to be black. Okay, here comes the black. See, the imagery is starting to blend together where I did that double impression, you know, or stacked impression, rather. Is that horizon up there? Okay. Kind of hitting it, putting a few little streaks underneath the waves, underneath the kind of the crest or the spindrift, as they call it. All right, let's hit that horizon up here a little bit more. Okay, kind of keep it in a nice tapered application. Okay. Like so. The darker you take areas of your piece, the lighter the lights will seem. So everything kind of got pretty muted in here, so I'm going to try to add a fairly dark element in a couple different areas. Usually the corners, but on this case we have that strong horizon line, so that's another opportunity for additional value, hue. How's that look? We have a nice kind of glowing light in there, huh? These are really fun, these real monochromatic pieces. They can get, there's a certain mood that they seem to, I don't know, convey or that color doesn't get. And it's different. I mean, colors are certainly emotional. They trigger certain types of things, but maybe, I don't know, maybe this isn't, maybe it's emotional, or maybe it's like contemplative or something, you know, there's kind of a different part of the brain that kind of these black and white pieces can, I don't know, might be stronger at, just because we don't have the you know, the color to kind of to fight for the certain other elements. Okay, alright. That looks about right. Okay, so pretty decent glow there. Okay. Back to the tree. It's weird stamping this tree so many times. Okay, so this tree will be going in right in that water. Oops, what am I doing here? I'm going for the gray here. Not the I want to do. Definitely black. It's going to have to stand out against that background there. Okay. Wipe out the bottom. And we'll put it in the water too, so I'll wipe out the bottom of those right there pretty good. Alright, now I think what I'm going to do is, I think I'll create a mask. It doesn't have to be anything too definitive, but okay. I think my tree is roughly right around here. Something like that. I don't want it to be such a straight mask, though. Let's see. Let's go kind of a torn mask. Maybe something like this. Top, bottom, left, right, middle, especially the middle. There we go. Okay, let's try to integrate this in the scene a little bit more. Okay, let's go with a little bit more shading in a couple areas. Okay. It won't be a perfect kind of shading thing because you know, the waves are, you know, very irregular, so I'll try to create some sort of kind of shadow line. This. So kind of those shadows are kind of coming out like that. I probably should have aimed that one a little bit more that way. Kind of blend it out a little bit. Kind of anchors the piece in there a little bit more. You know, while I'm doing that too, I think I need to do that on a couple other pieces here too. Just to, not on that one. I won't do too much on that either. All right. Okay. Got some long shadows here. Kind of create a little bit of diffusion here. I think it could be that part of that shadow or not, I don't know. So just something like It's like a little scumbling action. Scumbling is when you take like a paintbrush and you just kind of, dry brush, and you kind of just add a little texture into some areas. So we have something like that. Okay, now I think I could use a little bit more texture. Let me see if I can find my rocks. I saw them around here somewhere. Yeah, those rocks on the shoreline right here. This is the tiny rocks. Something like that. And then I'll do it in black. Okay, so grays and blacks in here. So you do the same thing with your imagery. But see, this area in here is really light, so I'll keep the black ones in the shadows. Okay? Alright, so you get something like that. Those will blend in a little bit better when they dry a little bit. Or just when this whole thing is sprayed. But let's see, let's blend them in a little bit more with some additional black. Okay. Like so. Four corners, tipping the edges. That is a nice, fun kind of foundation. Let me wipe off a little bit of her feet before where the horse's hoofs, just so that this kind of blends in a little bit more too. Alright, did I just use the Marvy Black on that. Do I want to go Versafine? Let's go with the Marvy. There's a certain mood to grayscale, isn't there? Okay. Let's grab some pigment ink here. Hero Hues. Unicorn, white. Use whatever one you have. This isn't brand specific. I'm using it because that happens to be the latest one I bought. I heard it was very good though. If very knowledgeable stampers at Olympia, Washington. Art and Soul. Okay, adding this down here, kind of adding that kind of frosty essence to things like waves and water and spray. Adding a little bit up on the horizon line. This white looks really great where light meets dark, okay? It doesn't have to be dark, it's just darker. So it just kind of blends things out a little bit. This is a real neutral white, so it is standing out a little bit more than what I'd probably prefer ideally, but I think it looks okay, you know, in here. Okay, the horse's legs look okay for me to go over a little bit. It's dry enough. If I did it in the Versafine, it'd still be wet, so. Okay. Let's try a little bit of the bleed-proof white. I'm going to try to target some of these areas in here where there's kind of those cresting waves in here. Okay, so if I get a little over the horse, that'll be fine. I say that because it'll be, you know, it's going to be there, so I can wipe it off too, so it won't be a disaster if I get something in some areas that I don't want. See that right down here? Does that kind of give it a little bit of a dynamic feeling? Okay. So there's your just kind of general texturing in here. And then let's go for some specifics here. Okay, let's grab our white pen and we'll target some specifics here. Now, there's a lot of waves in here, and I just kind of tilt my stylus tool and I go underneath those cresting waves like this, but if you want to do something really easy, you can just use like an alcohol pen. You can just come right up, right into these little areas like this, very specifically. And it's really easy to do with pens, if you want to get into real targeted areas, without toning everything out. Okay, here's your white paint pen, and just bringing some of these cresting waves out just slightly more with additional texture and contrast. There was a surfboard company in Santa Barbara called Spindrift, and we didn't even know what it meant. My brother used to get their boards, and he asked the guy, "What is Spindrift?" And he says, "Yeah, it's that, you know, little drifting spin-off coming off the top of the wave, you know, when it crests." Like, okay. So I don't know what this is. It's a lake or something like that. Who knows? There's a lake next to where we live, and it kind of seasonally. It's more than seasonally. It's like every few years. We get a lot of rain, and all these trees along the shoreline kind of are submerged for a period of years until the water rolls back, and then the trees start growing in there again, and they're green, and then we're hit by another kind of rainy winter, spring, and they're submerged once again. It's not as rough as this, but someone once told me they saw one of my scenes. They said, "Hey, trees don't grow in water," and I thought, well, you haven't seen Lake Hodges. They don't grow in water, but, they grow along the shoreline, and every time, that rain kind of pattern kind of comes and goes, you get all that submersion. Wetlands do that too. Okay, so there we have it. Alright, so I think we have 4 pieces. Let's take a look at them together, and let's see what we've come up with. Okay. Four pieces. What do they represent? I don't know. Different times, different moods, all kind of brought together by the compositional format. Okay. Certain types of elements. I mean, we have the antique linen in all 3 of them. I mean, they're all similar in terms of, there's some sort of definitive theme running through all of them, kind of like a needle and thread. We have certain techniques on all of them, like with the pen. I don't have any white pen in this one. I don't know if I want it in this one, though. Yeah, we could put it in a couple different areas, perhaps. But I'm not sure if I want to do that. This one's going to get a lot darker, though, once I spray it, because it dried dull. So we'll do that and see what it looks like, and I'll see if I need any extra touches. Probably not. But otherwise, I think this series is done, this quartet of pieces. Anyways, if you've sat through this, if you had it going on in the background, either way, it's a lot of patience sitting through these ones. But I don't know, I'd recommend doing these types of projects, where you address a given composition, but then do it a little bit different in each one. But have some sort of needle and thread running through them in terms of maybe the format. Now, certainly this composition is the same in all these ones. We have this, 1 inch down from the top type of horizon line. The tree is placed in the exact same spots. The characters been stamped out in dark, in one of the darkest colors in each one. And I don't know, from a thematic standpoint, they all kind of fit, even though they're different. They're all kind of the same in another, in another way. But it's fun to do that, and it's fun to address things in different seasons because it makes us kind of think about what we're doing, and especially it gets us to utilize our stamps in a different way and to see them a different way sometimes than what you would normally do when you're utilizing a given image. A lot of times, and this goes for me too. This is a really good assignment for me. Because it's easy to get caught up in certain types of color schemes and certain types of compositions, and just in the way we look at something sometimes, it gets us to contemplate and to break outside of different, kind of established color schemes that we're going back to too often. And when doing these types of things, it can kind of strengthen and bolster and add to your repertoire different types of color schemes and techniques as well that you can utilize going forward in different scenes, and not just when you're doing projects such as this one. Anyways, okay, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section, and maybe if you do some of these, maybe you can drop me a note and let me know what you did. All right? Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning into the channel.